I was chained to a post behind the livery at noon. The man who stepped out of the dust laughed. At the banker, not at me. Everyone turned when he did. Bright sky, hard light. Heat on the boards. Madison stood with iron cuffs on her wrists. The chain looped through a ring set into a beam darkened by years of rain. A ledger sat open on a nail keg. The banker watched the page like it might bite him. The sheriff kept 2 paces back, hat low, jaw tight. The town stared from the shade. Women with baskets, boys on the water trough, old men silent on the bench. Someone had written debt in chalk on the post at shoulder height. Her late husband's father had brought the banker. Property against arrears, the old man said. She eats, she pays. Madison's shawl had been taken. Her throat carried a collar mark from winter when the fever took her husband. She kept her face steady and breathed through the iron. The stranger was broad at the shoulders, hair tied back, coat frayed at the cuffs, a carpenter's scar running pale along one knuckle. He set a loaf of bread on the keg, then a small cedar ring he had carved from a knot, smooth and simple. He looked at the banker's polished boots, then up at the chalkword. And that was when he laughed. One short breath, soft, like he was tired of pretending this made sense. Name, the sheriff said. Isaac, he answered. The banker read the rule. Auction of labor until balance satisfied. Madison felt the chain pull as she shifted her weight to keep blood moving in her hands. She thought of her husband's empty boots by the door the day he didn't come home. She thought of the night the stove went out and she kept the fire with broken fence slats. Isaac held up coin and small goods wrapped in cloth. I don't buy people, he said. I settle paper. Then I hire by choice. Or I walk, the old man muttered. She's lazy. Never enough. Madison kept her eyes on the cedar ring. The grain ran tight in a circle. No beginning, no end. Isaac met her eyes once, brief, steady. You hungry? She nodded. The banker looked at the sheriff, then at the crowd. Bidding starts. Beyond the alley, riders turned in from the road. 3 men in dark coats with rifles across their laps. Not locals. They reined in at the boardwalk. The nearest spat and tapped his stock. Heard there's a sale, he said. The chain went quiet. The air felt thinner. The 3 riders slid down and tied off. The tallest had a scar over his lip that pulled his mouth to one side. He took the ledger without asking, and flipped pages with a dirty thumb. We'll take the debt and the labor. Fastest way to close this, he said, looking at Madison like she was a cartwheel. Neighbors edged back. The old father lifted his chin, then dropped it when the scar-mouthed man stared. The sheriff's hand hovered near his belt. No one moved. Isaac folded the cloth back from his goods. Coffee, a small sack of flour, a strip of smoked meat, coin, the cedar ring. Her work belongs to her, he said. Your paper belongs to paper. Pick which you chase, Scarmouth smiled. We chase both. Town law, the sheriff said, voice flat. No forced removal beyond county lines. The second rider grinned. Then we stay a while. Madison watched the loaf on the keg. Bread was simple. Bread made sense. She could taste the dry crumbs already, hear the small crunch in her jaw. She swallowed and felt the iron bite her wrists. Isaac stepped past the keg and put his back to the post beside her. He spoke low. You want me here? He asked. She didn't expect the question. People usually talked around her or over her. She nodded once. He took the chain in both hands, weighed it, then loosened the leather thong at his belt. From a pouch he drew a small iron wedge and a hammerhead without a handle, just a short stub. He looked at the sheriff. You going to stop me if I move the ring 2 inches? Depends where it lands, the sheriff said. Isaac set the wedge against the staple pin and struck it with controlled taps. Not loud, not fast. The stable hand peeked around the door. The town's sound faded to small things. The fly by the horse's eye, a woman's breath catching, the scrape of boot on dirt. Scarmouth reached for his rifle. The sheriff raised a palm. You fire here, you don't leave, he said. Isaac worked until the staple pin shifted. He slid part of the chain free. Then he did the thing that made the crowd murmur. He looped the freed length around his own wrist and pulled it tight. He looked at Madison again. Now we stand the same. Her throat burned. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a man who'd slept in snow and learned to make coffee from river water. He lifted the bread, broke it with his hands, and held her half to her mouth. She ate small, careful bites. Scarmouth spat near the keg. "We'll be back tonight," he said. No sheriff then. The riders mounted and left dust. The banker closed the ledger with a snap. "This isn't done," he said. The old father pointed once at Madison, then turned away. Isaac tested the chain. "We'll move when the light drops," he said. "Where?" she asked. "Fire and walls," he said. "Then we talk." The sheriff studied them both. "Make it clean," he said. "And quick." They left at dusk when the main street stretched long and empty. Isaac walked close, the chain between them quiet, but always there, the iron a small tug with each step. He led her past the mill, across the dry creek, up the slope toward cedars cut by wind. A single-room cabin waited there with a low fence and stacked wood, a lantern hanging from a nail by the door. Inside, he set her at the table and worked a small pick along the cuff. He kept the lantern low. The room smelled of shaved cedar and old smoke. A cradle sat half-finished near the hearth, boards planed smooth but not yet joined. On the wall, a woman's shawl hung folded. "Not new, kept. You have a wife?" Madison asked. Her voice was small. The chain pulled at her wrist as she lifted the tin cup he poured. "Had," he said. "Winter, long one." He kept working. She looked at the cradle. "Child?" "Almost," he said and left it there. Silence filled the cabin. Not the hard kind from town. A different one, warm with the pop of resin from the fire. Isaac worked the pick, patient. The cuff loosened, then stuck. He stopped, met her eyes. "It may hurt when it lets go." "I can take it," she said. He nodded once. "I know." She set the cup down. The water tasted of iron and cedar. "I wasn't enough," she said, surprising herself. "That's what he said when the cattle died, that I wasn't enough to keep a place steady." Isaac sat back, hands empty for a moment. Men say things when their guts are scared and they don't know how to hold it. Doesn't make it true. She stared at the cuff. "He never said he loved me, not once. I waited for it like weather." Isaac returned to the pick. "I say what I mean," he said. "I don't say what I don't." Boots sounded outside on packed dirt. 2 sets, then a third. The riders had found the path. Isaac blew the lantern low and moved to the door. He handed her the small hammer head. "If it gets close, you swing at hands, not faces," he whispered. Hands drop guns. Madison's fingers tightened around the iron. The chain bit and cooled with her sweat. A voice came from the dark. "Debt don't end at sundown," Isaac answered through the wood. "This is a house." You knock, silence. Then the scrape of a boot. The latch clicked once under pressure. Isaac laughed. It was quiet and real and out of place, and it made Madison feel a heat rise in her chest. He leaned to her ear. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. The cuff tugged. The pick found its seat. Something was about to give. Isaac opened the door a hand's width. The moon had lifted, throwing clear light on the yard and the men at the fence. Scarmouth stood with his rifle low. The other 2 flanked the gate. Far down the slope, town lanterns showed like small stars. "This cabin is out of your law," Scarmouth said. "This cabin is my law," Isaac said. He stepped out and kept the chain drawn behind him so Madison stayed in shadow. He raised his empty hands. "You want paper or blood?" "Paper, then blood," the second rider said. Isaac nodded to the sheriff, who wasn't there. He nodded anyway, like he was speaking to sense. "You know why I laughed?" he said. "Because all day men who never split a log talked about work like it lived in a ledger." Scarmouth sneered. "Spare me." Isaac pulled the free length of chain forward and lifted his own cuffed wrist into the moonlight. "I tied myself to her. If you drag one, you drag both. If you shoot one, the other falls on you. I'm heavy." A door hinge creaked in the dark behind the riders. The sheriff stepped from cedar shadow with 2 townsmen and a lantern covered in his palm. "I heard knocking," he said. His voice carried low. "And I heard the law called." Scarmouth shifted. "We got paper." The sheriff held out a folded sheet. "You got a lien." It's settled. Banker took Isaac's goods. He'll deny it tomorrow, but I signed and the town saw. You try to lift her now. I call it kidnapping." The men hesitated. Isaac took the chain, set it across the gatepost, and with one clean strike of his small wedge, he pinned it there. He walked back to Madison, wrapped the remaining slack around his own waist, and faced the men again as if he had all night. He did one more thing. He lifted the half-finished cradle, carried it out, and set it in the yard under the cedar. He ran his hand along the rail. "Tomorrow I finish this," he said. "Not for a baby now. For a house to have a soft thing in it again." Something tight inside Madison cracked and let air in. It surprised her. A sound she hadn't made since before the winter. Small at first, then true. She laughed. It wasn't loud. It was clean. Scarmouth flinched like he'd been struck. The second rider swore. "This town stinks," he said, and backed his horse away. Scarmouth looked from the sheriff to the cradle to the chain. He spat in the dust, then mounted. "We'll see you on the road," he said. They rode out, angry and small in the moonlight. Issaic's shoulders dropped. He turned back into the cabin. The laugh still lived on Madison's mouth, like a thing she could keep if she wanted. "Sit," he said softly. "Let me finish what I started." Morning came clear and cool. The cedar threw a thin shadow on the yard. Isaac heated the small iron key he kept wired under the table, pressed it into the cuff's pin, and twisted. The iron squealed once, then released. He stepped back, palms open, as if handing her space. Madison rubbed her wrists. The skin was worn but unbroken. She breathed in the cabin air, wood, coffee, smoke. She looked at the shawl on the wall. "Whose was that?" she asked. "My wife's," he said. "It kept its warmth. I kept it for that alone." He took it down and held it between his hands, not quite offering. "If you want it until you have your own," he said, "you take it. If you don't, it goes back." Madison stood. She felt the place where the cuff had been like a ghost hand. She touched the shawl. It was softer than it looked. She settled it over her shoulders and pulled the edge under her chin. The sheriff knocked, this time like a man visiting. He stepped just inside and set a paper on the table. "Banker filed your settlement," he said. "He'll grumble, but the mark is struck. Madison owes no one." She looked at the floorboards. The words were heavy in a good way. "Thank you," she said. The sheriff tipped his hat and left. Silence came again, the better kind. Isaac brought the cedar ring to her on his open palm. "I carved clumsy," he said. "It can mean nothing, or it can mean what you choose." He didn't kneel. He didn't press. He set it on the table beside her hand and stepped back to the cradle. He finished it before noon, working with sure cuts. When he set the last rail, he didn't say anything. He pushed it once with 2 fingers. It rocked and stilled. Madison sat beside him. "I have no baby," she said. "I know," he said. "Houses need quiet and soft things anyway." She looked at his hands. Scar and clean nail beds. "I thought laughter was done," she said. He nodded. "I thought home was done." She slid the ring onto her finger. It fit close enough. She stood, went to the doorway and looked down at the town. People moved like they always had, small and busy. The livery roof shone. The post still held chalk marks, but someone had wiped the word away. "Come down with me?" she asked. "Now?" He said, surprised. She nodded. "We show them. Not to ask. To tell." They walked side by side with the shawl on her shoulders and the ring catching light. At the post, Madison took a rag from a bucket and scrubbed the last chalk from the beam. Isaac set the cradle on the boardwalk outside the general store and left it for a mother who needed it. Neighbors stared. Then one woman smiled and gave a small nod like a blessing. "Lunch?" Isaac said, almost shy. Madison looked at him and felt the laugh rise again, easy this time. "Bread," she said. "Break it with me." They sat on the livery step, shared the last of the loaf, and let the town see that a different law held.